I want to talk about Officer Mike Fanone, the Capitol Police, and also narrative shaping by the media. I saw this cover story in Time with Mike Fanone, posing on the cover, and you can tell when the media goes for the heroic pose. He's in the heroic pose. When they had Trump on the cover, he was not in the heroic pose. So the heroic pose is, this is kind of a role model for the world, and that's Mike Fanone. And the title, here kind of confirms what Mike Fanone can't forget. So they're going to go into Mike Fanone's mind and show you what's been haunting this poor guy. Now, when you see something like this, you realize, I thought to myself, why Mike Fanone? Why him? There were a bunch of Capitol Police guys, or even a bunch of guys who even testified. Why did they pick him? And the answer is, when they write these articles, they're not giving you the news. They're spinning a morality tale. It's very important to be able to detect what is that morality tale. So here's their morality tale. Mike Fanone is a kind of a redneck, and of course all his poses are aimed at cultivating that. He's kind of in the flannel shirt, he's got a couple of tattoos, he's got a beard, and he, in the opening scene of the story, he's like in a bar, apparently like hitting on the girls. So the idea here is that this is a rough guy, this is a kind of working class guy, and most importantly, this is a guy who would be the kind of guy who would be for Trump. So they set this up beautifully. And the left is really good at this stuff. They're good at narrative shaping. So here we go. They go for a white cop who spent his time policing black neighborhoods. Politics became harder to ignore. He hated the way liberal politicians and the media always made police into the bad guys. So you're getting the idea here that this is a potential Trumpster. And then, of course, the point of the narrative is, by the way, if Mike Fanone was a real Trumpster, he'd never be on the cover of Time. So the idea here is it's a conversion story. Even this hard-bitten, redneck, rough, working-class Trumpster realized that something went very wrong in January 6th, and therefore he turned. So I'm now reading here, quote, Fanone was just like every other cop until after January 6th, he wasn't. So in other words, this is the Mike Fanone's Enlightenment story, in which Mike Fanone realizes that the real danger doesn't come from liberal politicians who are trying to defund the cops, but it comes from people like Trump and his supporters who are trying to overthrow democracy. So it's almost like, a redneck guy joins the cocktail party Harvard crowd. That's the underlying text of the story. And I'm going to read the conclusion because it kind of gives you the kind of lachrymose sob story way that they love to conclude these stories, with kind of fake humility. It's all drippingly obvious. Quote, what does Mike Fanone deserve? A parade? A key to the city? A White House ceremony? He's not asking for any of that. He's too virtuous to seek any kind of accolades. He's not asking to be called a hero. He just wants us to remember what his sacrifice was for. The idea here is that Mike Fanone, who, by the way, had no sacrifice, basically, here's a guy, oh, I was pushed around, oh, I suffered psychological trauma. No, the people who are really pushed around, who are really suffering trauma, are the people in solitary confinement. So Mike Fanone is actually serving a narrative that is being used to create a political prisoner class in America. So this is the kind of cop who should be defunded. This is basically a thug with a badge. And yet he's posing as sort of this apostle of virtue. Now you get a real window into Mike Fanone with a quote that he made to GOP members of Congress. I'm going to read it. You guys don't seem to have a problem when we're kicking the SHIT out of black people, but when we're kicking the SHIT out of white people, that's an issue. So let's decode this for a minute. Mike Fanone is basically saying to the GOP that the GOP is being very selective in who they want to be kicked around. I mean, Mike Fanone's point of view seems to be he has the right to kick around everybody. He's a non-discriminatory kicker around guy, but the GOP is being highly inconsistent. You guys only want me to kick around the blacks. You don't want me to kick around the whites. I actually have the right to kick both around. So this is Fanone. This is basically the mentality of this guy. Interestingly, Julie Kelly did some digging into Mike Fanone, and she shows that, first of all, this guy, his whole pose in the Time magazine article is fake. This guy's not a redneck. He's not a working class guy. He was raised in the wealthy DC suburb. His father is a partner in a major Democratic-leaning law firm in the DC area. So he's got this elite kind of Beltway pedigree. He went to Georgetown Prep, by the way, the same school that Kavanaugh went to. He was then thrown out of there, who knows for what, but then he went to a Maine boarding school. So here's a guy who sort of lives in a kind of leafy suburb. His father's extremely well connected. The law firm has given a lot of money to Biden. Here's a guy, by the way, who, thinks he has the pedigree, and in fact, he sort of does. I want to talk to GOP members of Congress. Why won't they meet with me? Now, the ordinary cop doesn't think like that. The ordinary cop doesn't think he has a right to an audience with Kevin McCarthy. But the reason Fanone does is he's grown up in that kind of environment where if you want to get a meeting, your dad makes a couple of phone calls. So this is not a guy. And right now, what's he doing? He's not parading. He's not patrolling the street. He's taking a leave of absence. And what's he spending is he pretends like for health reasons. He's, I'm sitting there, I'm thinking, I'm reflecting, I'm getting well after the January 6th trauma. But no, that's not what he's doing. In fact, he's booking media interviews. He's running around the place. He's on CNN. He's over here. He's interviewing with Time magazine, posing for his cover photograph. So these people are complete and total fakers. They're fakers, and the media is in it with them. So the media is like, okay, Fanone, let's see your tattoos. Okay, Fanone, let's put you on in a flannel shirt. No, don't wear that bow tie. It's gonna make you look like a fruitcake. So the whole idea is to create an aura to fool the readers of Time Mag, some of whom want to be fooled. They're like, oh yeah, it was what a moving story of this redneck who became essentially a limousine liberal after he saw the horrors of January 6th. This is how narrative is baked in the oven, and part of our job as sensible, intelligent people in America is to be able to spot it, decode it, and then laugh our heads off over it.